Good place to go to get our food. The kids like it here. So we're a little disappointed that it's going to be closing.
All Dominick stores are closed in early 2014.
I feel badly for the employees. They're going to lose their positions.
Once a beloved neighborhood staple in Chicago, Dominick's rose from a single Italian deli to a grocery empire, only to vanish seemingly overnight. Behind the shelves were corporate missteps, cultural clashes, and a forgotten community legacy. Its fall left a void not just in the market, but in the hearts of the neighborhoods it once served. This isn't just the story of a store. It's a cautionary tale of how losing sight of your roots can unravel nearly a century of success. Join us as we uncover the details behind what really happened to Dominick's history. Dominick's traces its roots to 1918, when Italian immigrant Dominick Di Matteo opened a modest delicatessen on Chicago's West Side. In an era when immigrant communities clustered together for survival and support, Di Matteo's deli became more than a business. It was a hub for working-class Italians craving both a taste of home and a place of trust. Di Matteo brought with him not only traditional recipes but also a deep-rooted commitment to service grounded in Italian-American immigrant values: hospitality, honesty, and relationships over transactions.
Yo, Dominick's. You's always in my corner.
This strong cultural foundation would inform every aspect of Dominick's early business model. From the outset, the store's operations prioritized personalized service. Customers were greeted by name, orders were remembered, and preferences were respected. Di Matteo wasn't building a faceless retail chain. He was creating a neighborhood fixture. The store was physically small but socially expansive, fostering genuine bonds with customers who returned week after week. Unlike the impersonal grocers of the time that focused on canned goods and non-perishables, Dominick's distinguished itself by offering fresh produce, homemade sausages, hand-cut meats, and prepared Italian meals. This focus on freshness and authenticity became a hallmark of the Dominick's experience. Rather than opting for lower-cost processed foods, Di Matteo believed quality was the best way to build loyalty, a strategy that paid off in spades. The store's family-run structure was central to its operation. Di Matteo's wife and children worked alongside him, giving customers a sense of familiarity and consistency. In many ways, shopping at Dominick's felt like stepping into someone's extended family kitchen. This tight-knit, family-first approach also enabled greater quality control, as every member had a stake in the business's reputation. The absence of outside investors or managers meant decisions were made quickly and with the customer in mind, not shareholders. Marketing efforts during these early years were minimal by today's standards, but remarkably effective. Dominick's grew through word-of-mouth recommendations from satisfied customers. The store didn't need flashy promotions. Its reputation for quality, service, and familiarity spread naturally through Chicago's Italian-American community and beyond. By the 1940s, Dominick's had become synonymous with trust and quality in ethnic grocery retail. As Dominick's popularity increased, expansion became a possibility. But Di Matteo pursued growth with notable caution. Rather than opening dozens of stores in rapid succession, he focused on measured, quality-focused expansion, ensuring each new location upheld the original store's values. The goal was never to scale at the expense of service. Each new store was chosen carefully, typically in neighborhoods with similar demographics and needs. This deliberate strategy helped maintain high operational standards and kept the brand identity intact. One of the subtle yet powerful aspects of Dominick's appeal was its cultural authenticity. From store signage to the aroma of fresh bread, every location evoked Italian warmth and tradition. Music, decor, and even employee uniforms subtly reinforced the brand's heritage. Customers, many of whom came from immigrant families themselves, appreciated this familiarity. Dominick's wasn't just selling food, it was selling a feeling of home. Family labor continued to be a key operational advantage. Not only did it keep costs manageable, but it also ensured that employees were deeply invested in the store's success. Family members knew the stakes, understood the vision, and were trained from within. This model created a workforce that was both reliable and intimately familiar with Dominick's customer-first ethos. Perhaps most significantly, the early success of Dominick's challenged prevailing business norms. At a time when grocery retail was dominated by faceless chains and standardization, DiMatteo's model proved that a small, culturally rooted, service-driven business could thrive, even outperforming larger competitors. Dominick's didn't rely on deep pockets or massive ad campaigns. Instead, it grew organically by treating customers like neighbors and food like family tradition. By the mid-20th century, Dominick's had laid the groundwork for what would become one of Chicago's most beloved grocery empires. Its success was no accident. It was the result of carefully balanced values, cautious growth, and unwavering focus on community. With strong roots in community and quality, how did Dominick's evolve from a neighborhood deli into a dominant force in the Chicago grocery market? The decades following World War II marked the true ascent of Dominick's from a cherished neighborhood deli to a regional grocery powerhouse. The post-war economic boom gave rise to suburban expansion, rising incomes, and a growing demand for convenient, full-service supermarkets. Recognizing these shifts, Dominick DiMatteo and his successors capitalized on the opportunity, executing a deliberate and strategic expansion across the greater Chicago area.
Began an heirloom tradition today, imported China at Dominick's.
By the late 1960s, Dominick's had grown from a single storefront to a network of thriving supermarkets that catered to both working-class families and upwardly mobile suburbanites. This growth was not random. Dominick's adopted a data-informed, community-focused site selection strategy, opening stores in emerging suburbs before national chains could stake their claim. Their understanding of Chicago's unique neighborhoods, ethnically diverse, loyal to local institutions, and often wary of corporate outsiders, allowed them to preempt competitors like Jewel Osco in key markets. Each store reflected the character of its surrounding community, reinforcing the brand's reputation for authenticity. One of Dominick's most defining innovations during this era was the introduction of in-store delis, bakeries, and prepared food sections, a rarity at the time. These services gave shoppers more than groceries. They offered convenience and quality, often prepared from recipes that mirrored the original store's Italian heritage. Unlike competitors that relied on packaged, processed foods, Dominick's gave customers freshly sliced meats, artisan breads, and hot meals ready to serve, blending the traditional corner deli experience with the scale of a supermarket. Dominick's stores were also distinguished by their thoughtful layout and inviting design. Unlike the sterile warehouse-style supermarkets of the 1960s and 70s, Dominick's invested in customer-friendly aesthetics. Aisles were wide, lighting was warm, and displays were curated with care. Seasonal themes and regional products created a sense of familiarity and excitement. Customers weren't just shopping, they were participating in an experience. This careful attention to atmosphere played a critical role in shaping Dominick's unique identity as a store that felt both upscale and accessible. Technological advancement was another key driver of Dominick's rise. In the early 1980s, it became one of the first regional chains to adopt bar-coded checkouts, a transformative move that improved inventory accuracy, sped up checkout times, and streamlined store operations. This early embrace of automation reflected the company's willingness to modernize without sacrificing its personalized approach. While competitors were still handwriting prices, Dominick's was already positioning itself as an efficient, forward-thinking brand. Dominick's also excelled at cultivating loyal middle-class suburban markets, particularly those composed of young families and upwardly mobile ethnic communities. The stores reflected a balance of affordability and quality, stocking a wide range of both name-brand staples and fresh, locally sourced goods. This approach resonated especially with working parents looking for a reliable one-stop shop that didn't feel impersonal or overpriced. Behind the scenes, Dominick's success was supported by strong relationships with suppliers and vendors, many of whom were local producers. These partnerships gave Dominick's an edge in pricing, stock freshness, and supply chain resilience. Preferred vendor agreements also allowed them to carry exclusive or limited-run products that weren't available at competitors, reinforcing customer loyalty. Leadership continuity under the DiMatteo family further reinforced the brand's consistency and authenticity. Even as Dominick's expanded, the family's direct involvement ensured that the core mission, quality, service, and community remained intact. Growth was carefully scaled, with new hires trained in Dominick's customer-first philosophy. Management didn't chase national trends blindly. Instead, they selectively adopted what worked for their Chicago-centric model. Dominick's marketing efforts during this period were equally strategic. The brand became a household name through a mix of television commercials, radio jingles, and colorful circular ads that highlighted weekly deals and seasonal themes. These campaigns weren't generic. They often emphasized local values, holidays, and events, reinforcing the store's image as a community fixture. By the mid-1980s, Dominick's had become a dominant regional force. Its profits surged while competitors struggled to match the chain's combination of innovation, service, and community connection. It was more than just a supermarket, it was a trusted institution, built on a foundation of vision, strategy, and deep local roots. As Dominick's reached new heights of success, were there early warning signs that the foundation beneath its growth was beginning to weaken? By the early 1990s, Dominick's appeared to be thriving on the surface, yet internal strains were beginning to erode its long-standing strengths. One of the most significant early missteps was the chain's rapid and aggressive expansion during this decade. In an attempt to solidify its dominance in the Chicago market, Dominick's opened numerous stores in quick succession. While this growth strategy increased its footprint, it overstretched management capacity and led to inconsistent store performance. Resources that had once gone toward service quality and innovation were increasingly diverted to maintaining basic operational efficiency across too many new locations. Simultaneously, competition intensified as national chains such as Walmart and Target began integrating grocery sections into their superstores, while regional rival Jewel Osco adopted aggressive pricing and promotions.
I feel like they're really friendly at Dominick's. It's a clean place. The food doesn't expire quickly. It's a good place to go to get our food. The kids like it here.
These competitors offered one-stop shopping at lower prices, eroding Dominick's price competitiveness. Dominick's attempted to retain its customer base through brand recognition and legacy, but its value proposition was no longer distinct enough to resist erosion from larger, better capitalized competitors. A major blind spot in Dominick's strategy was its failure to adapt to changing consumer preferences. As the 1990s progressed, shoppers began demanding healthier, organic, and ethnically diverse food options. Chains like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's capitalized on these trends, while Dominick's shelves remained largely reflective of conventional inventory models. This inflexibility alienated younger consumers and new immigrant populations, both of which were growing demographics in Chicago's evolving neighborhoods. Meanwhile, the physical condition of Dominick's stores began to betray signs of neglect. Many locations, particularly those established in the 1960s and 70s, suffered from aging infrastructure and outdated layouts. While competitors invested heavily in store renovations, Dominick's was slow to modernize. Dim lighting, cramped aisles, and obsolete refrigeration systems created a shopping environment that felt increasingly out of touch. Shoppers who once felt at home in Dominick's began shifting to newer, cleaner, more inviting alternatives. Another growing challenge came from rising labor costs, largely driven by long-standing union contracts. While these agreements had once provided stability and loyalty among staff, they became financially burdensome as profit margins thinned. Dominick's found itself caught between honoring legacy commitments and trying to compete with non-unionized chains operating on leaner labor models. Attempts to renegotiate contracts often led to labor disputes, further straining internal morale. A deeper structural issue also emerged: the increasing conflict between Dominick's traditional family-style culture and the pressures of modern corporate retailing. As leadership tried to transition toward a more scalable and standardized business model, many longtime employees and managers resisted changes they saw as a departure from Dominick's identity. This cultural friction slowed decision-making and impeded the development of cohesive modernization plans. Compounding these problems were poorly implemented technological upgrades, particularly in checkout systems and inventory tracking. Dominick's introduced new point-of-sale systems that frequently malfunctioned, causing delays and customer frustration. At the same time, insufficient investment in data analytics meant that real-time sales insights and inventory optimization, now standard tools in retail, remained underdeveloped within the chain. Dominick's also suffered from outdated and inadequate market research. The brand continued targeting suburban, middle-class families even as urban demographics shifted rapidly. Millennials, immigrants, and younger professionals were reshaping the grocery market with new shopping habits and dietary preferences. Dominick's marketing and merchandising strategies, however, remained anchored in a 1980s mindset, missing opportunities to appeal to a broader, modern audience. A crucial tactical error was the company's over-reliance on suburban markets, which were becoming saturated and less profitable. As urban revitalization brought affluence and density back to Chicago's core, competitors capitalized on urban grocery concepts, compact stores, online ordering, and premium selections. Dominick's failed to adapt its format to suit these areas, forfeiting market share in a pivotal shift. By the late 1990s, there was a growing disconnect between Dominick's leadership and its customer base. Executive decisions seemed increasingly out of sync with what shoppers wanted, from product offerings to store experience. What had once been a beloved, community-first chain was gradually transforming into a brand that no longer understood its place in the changing retail landscape. The cracks were visible, but the full collapse was still to come. In the face of mounting internal and external challenges, could a corporate acquisition provide the stability Dominick's needed, or would it accelerate its decline? In 1998, Dominick's was acquired by California-based grocery giant Safeway, Inc. for a staggering $1.85 billion, a move that initially sparked excitement but quickly devolved into a cautionary tale of corporate miscalculation. Safeway believed that Dominick's, then the second-largest grocery chain in the Chicago area, could be folded seamlessly into its portfolio and made more profitable through national standardization.
Dominick shut their doors over a year ago.
I feel badly for the employees that are going to lose their positions.
What it failed to recognize was that Dominick's success was rooted not in efficiency, but in deep cultural and community connections that could not be replicated through spreadsheets and central planning. One of Safeway's first major missteps was its attempt to nationalize product lines, stripping stores of beloved local brands and replacing them with private label items common in Safeway's Western U.S. markets. Items that Chicagoans had come to expect, local sausages, ethnic breads, and regional snacks, vanished from shelves, often without warning or explanation. Shoppers walked in looking for familiar staples and found generic substitutes that felt out of place, eroding both trust and satisfaction. This shift was part of a broader effort to standardize operations across all Safeway-owned banners, from store layouts and signage to supply chains and inventory. In doing so, Safeway erased the distinctive neighborhood market feel that had defined Dominick's for decades. What had once been a personalized, culturally reflective shopping experience began to resemble a bland, corporate template. The mosaic of Chicago's diverse communities, each with unique food preferences and shopping habits, was replaced by a one-size-fits-all model that didn't fit anyone well. As Dominick's stores lost their local flavor, customers responded with frustration and disengagement. Longtime shoppers, many of whom had been loyal for generations, found that the chain no longer understood or reflected their needs. Gone were the Italian delis, the scratch bakeries, the hand-cut meats, and the prepared foods that once made Dominick's special. These removals were not just product changes. They represented a loss of cultural and emotional connection, which no loyalty program could repair. The internal culture also suffered under Safeway's leadership. Employees who had worked under the DiMatteo family's personable and community-first model were now subjected to rigid corporate protocols, frequent leadership turnover, and a sharp decline in autonomy. Safeway introduced systems and metrics that prioritized cost-cutting over customer experience, creating a work environment that felt impersonal and bureaucratic. Morale dropped, service quality declined, and turnover rates increased, all of which were felt acutely by customers on the sales floor. Adding to the discontent was a noticeable increase in prices following the acquisition. Safeway's pricing structure, developed for markets with different cost dynamics, proved uncompetitive in Chicago, where Jewel Osco and other chains were slashing prices to gain market share. Dominick's, once seen as a value-conscious but quality-driven store, began to feel overpriced and out of touch, particularly as economic anxiety grew in the early 2000s. Safeway's leadership lacked understanding of Chicago's market dynamics, mistakenly assuming that practices successful in California or Arizona would translate seamlessly to the Midwest. Chicago's shoppers, fiercely loyal to regional identities and food traditions, rejected the homogenized Safeway model. Furthermore, Safeway's upper management rarely engaged directly with Chicago operations, resulting in disconnects between corporate strategy and local realities. Perhaps the most symbolic loss was the elimination of Dominick's Italian deli and fresh food departments, which had been at the heart of the brand's identity. These weren't just popular features, they were Dominick's signature. Their removal sent a clear message. Dominick's was no longer Dominick's, but merely a Safeway store in disguise. This decision alienated older customers and ethnic communities who had long relied on those offerings as cultural touchstones. Safeway's marketing approach compounded the brand erosion, relying on generic national campaigns that failed to resonate with Chicago audiences. Ads lacked local flavor, community relevance, and emotional connection, making it clear that the brand was no longer speaking to its core audience. Meanwhile, competitors such as Jewel Osco and Mariano's seized the opportunity to position themselves as authentically Chicago, revamping their stores to reflect local tastes and values. In less than a decade, what had once been one of Chicago's most trusted and beloved grocery chains had become a symbol of corporate overreach and cultural blindness. The Safeway acquisition was not just a financial transaction, it was a dismantling of a legacy. The damage, once done, proved irreversible. After years of cultural clashes and strategic missteps under Safeway's ownership, was there any hope left for saving Dominick's legacy? By the early 2000s, Dominick's once dominant presence in the Chicago grocery scene had begun to unravel. Its market share steadily declined, slipping from second place in the region to an increasingly distant third. Shoppers defected to competitors who offered lower prices, better service, and more attuned local offerings. Safeway's efforts to reverse the downturn were inconsistent and reactive rather than strategic.
Dominick's will be closing its 72 locations throughout the Chicagoland area.
Attempted rebranding initiatives, including updated logos, redesigned stores, and new advertising campaigns, failed to overcome the damage done to the chain's public image. Customers viewed the changes as superficial, not substantive, and the perception persisted that Dominick's was no longer the community-rooted brand it once was. Internally, Safeway had lost confidence in turning the chain around. Rather than investing in a deep, locally tailored restructuring, the company opted to cut its losses, ultimately concluding that Chicago was an unprofitable and unmanageable market. In October 2013, Safeway announced it would exit the Chicago market entirely, shuttering all 72 remaining Dominick's stores by the end of the year. The closure ended 95 years of Dominick's history, marking one of the most dramatic exits in modern grocery retail. The shutdown left a gaping hole in the city's grocery landscape, but it was quickly filled. New players like Mariano's, a Chicago-based chain owned by Roundy's, rapidly expanded into former Dominick's locations. By emphasizing fresh foods, local sourcing, and neighborhood-centric service, Mariano's successfully captured disaffected Dominick's shoppers and turned Safeway's failure into its own opportunity. Meanwhile, chains like Jewel Osco and Whole Foods also benefited from the void. The human cost of the closure was stark. Thousands of employees lost their jobs, many with little severance or transition support. For long-serving staff who had worked through the Dominick family era, the abrupt end felt particularly bitter. Community members expressed outrage and grief, not just over the closures, but over the manner in which they were handled, with little transparency, warning, or respect for local ties. Behind the scenes, one of the most telling factors in Safeway's decision was real estate valuation. Many Dominick's store sites had appreciated significantly in value, making them more profitable to sell than to operate. This financial calculus underscored the shift in priorities from community-based service to shareholder value. Today, the fall of Dominick's is studied in business schools as a prime example of how corporate misalignment, cultural disregard, and strategic inflexibility can destroy a once thriving brand. For Chicagoans, Dominick's remains a symbol of lost neighborhood identity, sacrificed in the era of national consolidation and disconnected decision-making.